German Admiral Dönitz thought his U-boats were invisible. Then American sailors cracked Enigma and hunted them down. 1941 to 1945. Admiral Karl Dönitz believed his Enigma cipher was unbreakable. German U-boats transmitted locations, targets, and tactics by radio, confident their communications were secure. The Enigma machine had 159 quintillion possible settings, mathematically impossible to crack, German engineers insisted. Then, Allied code breakers at Bletchley Park did the impossible. Every German submarine message decoded, every position revealed, every attack anticipated. Dönitz watched his U-boats sail to exact locations where Allied destroyers waited. He never knew why. The secret was so closely guarded that even today, some Enigma operations remain classified. This is the story of how mathematics won the Battle of the Atlantic.
Berlin, 1941. Kriegsmarine headquarters. Admiral Karl Dönitz stood before the assembled U-boat commanders, his confidence absolute. On the desk before him sat an Enigma cipher machine, a typewriter-sized device of rotors, wires, and electrical contacts. "Gentlemen," Dönitz began, "this machine guarantees our communications are secure. The British may intercept our radio transmissions, but they cannot read them. Our mathematicians assure me the Enigma code is mathematically unbreakable." He wasn't exaggerating. The Enigma machine, with its 3 rotors, later 4 for naval versions, plugboard, and daily key settings, created 159 quintillion possible configurations. Even if someone captured an Enigma machine without knowing that day's settings, breaking the code would require testing every possible combination. German cryptographers had calculated it would take thousands of years to break Enigma through brute force, even with hundreds of mathematicians working continuously. The code was, for all practical purposes, unbreakable. Or so they thought. Kapitänleutnant Reinhard Hardigan, commanding U-123, raised his hand. "Herr Admiral, what if the British capture an Enigma machine?" Dönitz smiled. Even with a machine, they'd need to know the daily key settings. Those change every 24 hours at midnight. They'd need to capture not just the machine, but our codebooks showing the settings for each day. And even then, they'd only have one day's settings. The next day, new settings, and they'd be blind again. The U-boat commanders nodded, satisfied. Their communications were secure. They could coordinate wolf-pack attacks by radio without fear of Allied interception. They could report positions, convoy sightings, and tactical plans, confident the enemy couldn't read them. This confidence would cost Germany the Battle of the Atlantic, because while Dönitz was assuring his commanders that Enigma was unbreakable, British and later American codebreakers were already reading some German messages, and by 1943 they'd be reading nearly all of them in near real time. The Germans never knew. They trusted their mathematics. They trusted their engineers. They trusted Enigma. That trust would sink more U-boats than any depth charge.
50 miles north of London sat a Victorian mansion called Bletchley Park. To anyone asking, it was Government Code and Cipher School, a boring bureaucratic office doing boring bureaucratic work. In reality, Bletchley Park housed the most important secret intelligence operation of World War II. Over 10,000 people worked there, most of them women, all sworn to absolute secrecy. They were breaking German codes, including Enigma. The operation began before the war. In 1939, Polish intelligence gave the British their research on Enigma, including a replica machine and early decryption methods. The Poles had been secretly studying German Enigma for years, making crucial breakthroughs before Germany invaded Poland. Britain took this foundation and built on it.
They recruited mathematicians, chess champions, crossword puzzle experts, anyone with exceptional pattern recognition and logical thinking. Cambridge and Oxford universities were quietly asked to identify their brightest students for important war work. Alan Turing, a 27-year-old mathematician from Cambridge, arrived at Bletchley Park in September 1939. He would become the key figure in breaking naval Enigma, the version used by U-boats. Turing understood that breaking Enigma required more than brilliant mathematicians. It required machines that could test thousands of possible settings per hour. Humans were too slow. They needed mechanical code breakers. Turing designed the bomb, an electromechanical device, not a computer despite common belief, that could test Enigma settings rapidly. The bomb looked like a massive metal cabinet, 7 feet tall and 6 feet wide, filled with rotating drums that simulated Enigma rotors. When a German message was intercepted, Bletchley Park analysts would look for cribs, likely words or phrases that might appear in the message. Weather reports often started with wetter, weather. Messages might end with Heil Hitler. These cribs gave the bomb starting points. The bomb would run through possible settings, testing each one against the crib. When it found a setting that made the crib decrypt correctly, it would stop. Analysts would then use that setting to decrypt the rest of the message. In theory, it worked beautifully. In practice, naval Enigma was far harder to break than other German codes.
Naval Enigma was the toughest German code. While Army and Luftwaffe Enigma used 3 rotors, Kriegsmarine used 4. This increased possible settings from 159 quintillion to over 4 sextillion, a number so large it's essentially meaningless. Worse, German naval operators used stricter radio discipline than other services. They sent shorter messages with fewer cribs. They changed procedures regularly, and they were paranoid about security. Through 1940 and most of 1941, Bletchley Park couldn't break naval Enigma consistently. They might crack a message days or weeks late, long after the intelligence was useful. U-boats operated with effective communication security. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source: captured materials. In May 1941, the British destroyer HMS Bulldog captured U-110 before the crew could scuttle it. Boarding parties found an intact Enigma machine and, crucially, code books showing key settings for the current month. This intelligence windfall allowed Bletchley Park to read naval Enigma for several weeks. They learned German procedures, message formats, and operating patterns. When the captured codebooks expired, they'd gained enough knowledge to attack the code more effectively. But reading Enigma consistently required continuous intelligence updates. The Germans changed procedures frequently. Captured materials went out of date. Bletchley Park needed a continuous supply of current codebooks and machine settings. Enter the pinch operations. Raids specifically designed to capture German naval materials without alerting them to what was being captured or why.
October 30th, 1942, North Atlantic. HMS Petard depth-charged U-559 until the submarine surfaced crippled. As the German crew abandoned ship, 3 British sailors, Lieutenant Anthony Fasson, able seaman Colin Grazier, and 16-year-old Tommy Brown, swam to the sinking submarine. They knew U-559 was sinking. They knew the hatch could close at any moment, trapping them inside. But they also knew that submarine might contain codebooks that could save thousands of Allied lives. Fasson and Grazier climbed inside the flooding submarine and grabbed everything they could find: codebooks, signal documents, Enigma rotors. They passed materials up to Brown, who ferried them to a rescue boat. The submarine was sinking fast. Brown, realizing the danger, shouted for Fasten and Grazier to get out. They were still inside, gathering documents, when U-559 suddenly dropped beneath the waves. Both men went down with it. Brown survived with the recovered documents. Fasten and Grazier drowned, but their sacrifice yielded critical intelligence. The captured materials let Bletchley Park break naval Enigma consistently for the first time. Both men were awarded the George Cross posthumously. Their families were told they died heroically in combat, but couldn't be told why. The Enigma secret was too important to risk. Similar pinch operations occurred throughout the war. Allied forces would attack German vessels specifically to capture codebooks and cipher materials, then sink the vessel to hide what was taken. The Germans never suspected that material captures were targeted intelligence operations.
By early 1943, Bletchley Park was reading most German naval messages within hours of transmission. The intelligence was code-named Ultra, higher than top secret. Ultra revealed U-boat positions reported by submarines themselves, convoy attack plans coordinated by Dönitz, rendezvous locations where U-boats met supply submarines, damage reports from U-boats that had been attacked, fuel status, torpedo counts, morale reports. It was like reading the enemy's mail. Better, it was like listening to their phone calls in real time. But Ultra created an impossible dilemma. The intelligence was only valuable if the Germans didn't know Enigma was compromised. If U-boats suddenly found Allied destroyers waiting at every rendezvous point, if every convoy avoided wolf packs, the Germans would realize their code was broken. They'd change procedures, and Bletchley Park would be blind again. So Ultra had to be used carefully, selectively, and with elaborate cover stories. Convoys couldn't simply avoid every U-boat, that would be too obvious. Sometimes convoys had to sail into danger, even though Ultra revealed the threat, to avoid alerting Germans. When Ultra intelligence was used, it required cover. If destroyers were sent to hunt a U-boat, they'd first send a reconnaissance aircraft to discover it, giving a reason for the destroyers to be there. Messages would be sent in codes the Germans could read, explaining how the target was found. The paranoia about protecting Ultra was intense. Fewer than 100 people in the Allied command knew Ultra existed. Frontline commanders who received Ultra intelligence often didn't know where it came from. They just received special intelligence from unknown sources. Churchill himself intervened to protect Ultra. When Bletchley Park warned that Coventry would be bombed in November 1940, Churchill made the agonizing decision not to evacuate the city or reinforce defenses. Doing so might alert Germans that their codes were compromised. Coventry burned. Hundreds died. But Enigma remained secret.
The Admiralty's submarine tracking room in London used Ultra intelligence to plot every German U-boat's position. Commander Roger Wynne ran the operation with obsessive attention to detail. Wynne's team maintained a massive map showing known U-boat positions from Ultra decrypts, estimated positions of U-boats that hadn't reported recently, convoy routes, areas where U-boats were likely hunting, rendezvous points for supply submarines. Every decoded message was analyzed. If U-269 reported sinking a ship at specific coordinates, Wynne knew exactly where U-269 was. If Dönitz ordered wolf packs to form up at a certain location, Wynne could route convoys around them. The tracking room's accuracy was uncanny. Wynne could often predict U-boat movements before the submarines moved. He understood Dönitz's tactics so well, he could anticipate orders before they were sent. American Navy Commander Kenneth Knowles ran a similar operation in Washington, coordinating with Wynne. Between them, they had a real-time picture of German submarine deployment that Dönitz himself didn't have. Dönitz only knew what his U-boats reported. Wynne and Knowles knew what every U-boat had reported. But this knowledge came with terrible responsibility. When a convoy was threatened, Wynne had to decide: divert the convoy and risk alerting the Germans the code was broken, or let the convoy continue and accept probable losses. Usually, they split the difference. Route the convoy slightly off course, not enough to be obvious, but enough to make Wolfpack attacks less likely. Send extra escorts. Position aircraft patrols nearby. Give the convoy better odds without making it obvious they knew U-boat positions.
February 1st, 1942. Bletchley Park went dark. Germany had introduced a modified Enigma for U-boats with 4 rotors instead of 3. Overnight, naval Enigma became unbreakable again. The bombs, calibrated for 3-rotor messages, couldn't handle the 4th rotor's additional complexity. For 10 months, Allied intelligence was blind. U-boats operated with secure communications. The happy time resumed. Sinkings skyrocketed. Convoys sailed without knowing where wolf packs were waiting. Dönitz never knew how close he'd come to winning the Battle of the Atlantic. If the 4-rotor Enigma had been introduced in 1940, the Allies might never have broken it in time. Britain might have starved. The war might have ended differently. But in December 1942, Bletchley Park broke the 4-rotor Enigma. New bombs, specifically designed for the 4-rotor version, began operating. Ultra-intelligence resumed. And immediately the tide turned. In January 1943, Allied convoys began avoiding U-boat patrol lines with suspicious accuracy. Wolf packs that should have found convoys found empty ocean. U-boats that rendezvoused with supply submarines found destroyers instead. Dönitz was baffled. In his war diary he wrote, "The enemy's evasive action is so effective and occurs so frequently that it can no longer be attributed to coincidence. Some breach of security must exist." He ordered investigations. Were U-boat crews compromised? Were there spies in his headquarters? Was radio direction finding more advanced than he thought? The one thing Dönitz never seriously considered was that Enigma itself was compromised. The mathematicians had assured him it was impossible. The engineers had guaranteed it. Breaking Enigma was mathematically impossible. Except the British had done the impossible, and Dönitz, trusting his experts, never realized it.
May 1943. The slaughter began. Armed with ultra-intelligence, Allied forces systematically hunted U-boats. Destroyers appeared at rendezvous points before submarines arrived. Aircraft found U-boats in areas they'd just reported as clear. Wolf packs forming up were attacked before they could strike convoys. From the German perspective, it seemed impossible. How did Allied forces know where to look? The Atlantic was vast. U-boats were small. Yet destroyers found them with impossible accuracy. Oberleutnant Herbert Werner, commanding U-415, described the paranoia. "We'd surface at night to recharge batteries and ventilate the boat. Within minutes, aircraft would appear. How did they know? We'd barely transmitted our position report when destroyers would be racing toward us. It was like they could see through water, through darkness." Every U-boat crew developed the same fear. Somehow, impossibly, the enemy knew where we were. They were right to be afraid. Ultra gave Allied forces something close to omniscience. Not perfect. Messages took time to decrypt. U-boats could change course after reporting position, but close enough to be devastating. Captain Daniel Gallery,
commanding hunter-killer group built around USS Guadalcanal, used ultra-intelligence to hunt U-boats in the Atlantic. He later described the advantage. We'd receive intelligence, source never specified, about U-boat positions. We'd steam to those coordinates and find submarines exactly where the intelligence said they'd be. I didn't know how we were getting this information, but I knew it was gold. We sank 4 U-boats in 3 months using intelligence that seemed almost magical. Gallery would later capture U-505, one of the greatest intelligence coups of the war, without ever knowing the full story of why capturing intact Enigma materials was so valuable.
By mid-1943, Dönitz was desperate to find the security breach. U-boat losses were catastrophic. His wolf packs were being systematically destroyed. He ordered multiple investigations. Were U-boat crews being careless with radio discipline? Had Allied direction-finding technology improved dramatically? Were spies in BDU headquarters? Had someone sold Enigma keys to the enemy? German security services interrogated returning U-boat commanders. They analyzed radio traffic patterns. They studied every possible way the Allies might be finding submarines. The one explanation consistently ruled out was Enigma compromise. German cryptographers ran multiple reviews, each time concluding the code remained secure. They calculated that breaking Enigma required impossible computational resources. Therefore, it couldn't be broken. This logical certainty blinded them. Because Enigma could not be broken, according to mathematics, they never seriously investigated whether it had been broken. Some U-boat commanders developed their own theories. One popular belief was that Allied destroyers had developed a method of detecting diesel exhaust fumes from miles away. Crews became paranoid about ventilating their submarines, creating health hazards from bad air. Another theory suggested the British had developed invisible paint for U-boats, imagining that Allied agents had somehow painted U-boats with substances that made them visible to special detection equipment. This theory was so widespread that German counterintelligence actually investigated it seriously. The truth, that Bletchley Park was reading nearly every U-boat message, was too simple and too impossible for Germans to believe.
The decision to protect Ultra at all costs meant accepting casualties that might have been prevented. When Ultra revealed a U-boat patrol line across a convoy route, intelligence officers faced terrible choices. Routing the convoy around the patrol line completely would alert Germans. Sailing through with heavy escort might work, but meant probable losses. Sometimes, convoys sailed toward known threats because completely avoiding them would compromise Ultra. Ships were sunk, sailors died, all to protect a secret that was saving thousands of other lives. Commander Roger Wynne, running the submarine tracking room, made these decisions regularly. He later described the moral weight. We knew where U-boats were. We could have saved ships by routing around them. But if we avoided every threat, the Germans would know we had their codes. So sometimes we accepted losses. Men died because we couldn't reveal how much we knew. That burden never left me. The most agonizing decisions involved specific threats. When Ultra revealed a particular U-boat was hunting a particular convoy, should that convoy be warned? Usually yes, but the warning had to come with a cover story. Reconnaissance aircraft spotted a U-boat in your area, never revealing the real source. Sometimes warnings couldn't be sent without risking Ultra. The convoy would sail into danger while intelligence officers watched helplessly. Ships would be torpedoed. Survivors would struggle in Atlantic waters, and the men who could have prevented it maintained silence. Churchill understood the stakes. When confronted with specific cases where Ultra warnings might have saved lives but weren't sent, he responded, "The few must be sacrificed to save the many. Ultra is winning us this war. We cannot risk it."
By 1944, Over 200 bombs were operating at Bletchley Park and outstations, running 24 hours a day. Each machine was named after a woman: Agnes, Barbara, Catherine, operated primarily by Women's Royal Naval Service, WRENS, who had no idea what the machines actually did. The bombs were loud, hot, and temperamental. The rotating drums created a rhythmic clacking sound that was audible outside the buildings. When a bomb found a possible Enigma setting, it would stop. Bells would ring, and operators would note the setting for analysts to test. But Germany kept modifying Enigma, requiring constant British adaptation. New rotors, changed wiring, different reflector settings. Each modification meant recalibrating bombs and developing new braking techniques. The cryptographic battle was continuous technological warfare. Germany introduced changes trying to improve security. Britain adapted their methods to break the new versions. Neither side knew the other's capabilities fully. Germany also introduced the Kurzsignale system, preset short messages encoded by special tables. Instead of transmitting full messages, U-boats would send a brief code, meaning convoy spotted at grid reference X. This reduced transmission time and air exposure, making direction finding harder. Bletchley Park captured Kurzsignale tables through pinch operations and learned to decode them too. The technological advantage kept shifting. But after 1943, Britain generally stayed ahead.
June 4, 1944, Captain Daniel Gallery's hunter-killer group detected U-505 west of Africa. Gallery made an unprecedented decision. Instead of sinking the U-boat, he'd capture it. This was extraordinarily dangerous. German standing orders required U-boat crews to scuttle their boats before capture, destroying all classified materials. But Gallery wanted an intact U-boat with its Enigma machine, codebooks, and operational documents. The intelligence value was enormous, though Gallery didn't know exactly why. He wasn't cleared for Ultra. After damaging U-505 with depth charges, forcing it to surface, Gallery's destroyers raced in. Boarding parties from USS Pillsbury scrambled onto the U-boat before the crew could scuttle it. Gunfire between Americans and Germans erupted on the submarine's deck. The German captain ordered scuttling charges activated, but the boarding party reached them first and prevented detonation. U-505 was captured intact. American sailors grabbed everything: Enigma machine, codebooks, signal logs, technical manuals, even the captain's private papers. The captured materials were pure intelligence gold: current codebooks, operational procedures, and most valuably, confirmation that Germans still trusted Enigma, showing they didn't suspect it was compromised. But now Gallery faced a problem. If word leaked that U-505 was captured intact, Germany would immediately change all codes. The intelligence coup would become worthless. The solution was unprecedented secrecy. The German crew was imprisoned incommunicato for the rest of the war. They couldn't write letters, send messages, or communicate with anyone. The International Red Cross was told U-505 had sunk with all hands. Families of the crew were informed their sons, husbands, fathers were dead. U-505 was towed to Bermuda under tarpaulins to hide its identity. Later, it was moved to the United States and kept secret. The capture wasn't publicly revealed until after Germany surrendered.
By 1945, ultra-intelligence had reduced U-boat effectiveness to near zero. German submarines couldn't operate without Allied forces knowing their positions, orders, and intentions. New U-boat commanders arriving at operational units received grim briefings. Their predecessors were mostly dead. Average survival time measured in weeks. The Atlantic had become a death trap. Dönitz kept sending them anyway. Hitler demanded the U-boat campaign continue. Dönitz, still believing in his boats despite catastrophic losses, obeyed. But the crews knew. Young men barely trained climbed into submarines they called iron coffins, knowing they probably wouldn't return. Some crews mutinied rather than sail. Others went stoically, doing their duty despite understanding it was futile. The final U-boat sunk by Allied action was U-233-36, destroyed on May 5, 1945, 3 days before Germany surrendered. Pointless deaths in a war already lost. When Germany surrendered on May 8th, surviving U-boats were ordered to surface, raise black flags, and proceed to Allied ports. The once feared wolf packs limped into harbors as defeated enemies. Dönitz, who'd been appointed Hitler's successor and led Germany for 1 week, still didn't know Enigma had been compromised. He surrendered believing U-boats had been defeated by superior technology and numbers, never suspecting the real cause was broken codes.
After Germany surrendered, the Enigma secret remained classified. Bletchley Park was dismantled. The bombs were destroyed. Documents were locked away. Personnel were reminded their oaths of secrecy remained in force. Why the continued secrecy? Because British intelligence was selling Enigma machines to other countries, telling them the codes were secure. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, Britain read diplomatic and military communications from nations using Enigma, believing their codes were safe. The full story wasn't declassified until 1974. Even then, some details remained classified. Some Enigma operations are still secret today, over 75 years after the war ended. Alan Turing, whose work was critical to breaking Enigma, never received public recognition during his lifetime. In 1952, he was prosecuted for homosexuality, then illegal in Britain. He was chemically castrated as punishment. In 1954, he died from cyanide poisoning, ruled suicide, though some doubt the verdict. Turing's critical role in winning the war remained secret until decades after his death. The man who helped save millions of lives died disgraced and forgotten. Only in 2013 did Britain grant him a posthumous pardon. In 2019, he was chosen to appear on the 50-pound note, finally receiving the recognition he'd earned but never received. The thousands of codebreakers at Bletchley Park who broke Enigma went to their graves without public acknowledgement. They'd signed Official Secrets Act declarations. Most kept the secret, even from families. Some wives never knew what their husbands had done during the war. Some veterans took the secret to their graves, dying before declassification.
Breaking Enigma was one of the greatest intelligence achievements in history. Historians estimate it shortened the war by 2 to 4 years, saving countless lives. Admiral Dönitz never learned the truth. When told after the war that Enigma had been broken, he refused to believe it. Impossible, he insisted. Our mathematicians assured us Enigma was unbreakable. He died in 1980, still believing German codes had remained secure, that U-boats were defeated by technology and numbers, never by compromised communications. Other German commanders were equally shocked when the truth emerged. They'd trusted Enigma completely. Learning it had been broken throughout the war was devastating. It meant every tactical decision, every strategic plan, every operational order had been known to the enemy. The Battle of the Atlantic was won by depth charges and hedgehogs, by destroyers and aircraft. But it was also won by mathematicians at Bletchley Park who broke codes the Germans believed unbreakable. Breaking Enigma proved that intelligence wins wars, that mathematics and logic can defeat physical force, that secrets are never as secure as their keepers believe. Admiral Dönitz thought his U-boats were invisible. He trusted Enigma absolutely. His engineers had assured him the code was mathematically unbreakable. He was catastrophically wrong. British and American codebreakers had done the mathematically impossible. They'd broken Enigma. They'd read nearly every U-boat message for over 2 years.
They'd known positions, plans, and tactics. They'd hunted submarines with intelligence that seemed magical because it was. It was the magic of mathematics defeating military engineering. The Germans never suspected. They investigated every possible security breach except the one that mattered. They blamed bad luck, improved Allied technology, better tactics, even traitors in their ranks. Never the codes themselves, because the codes were mathematically secure. Except mathematics, when properly applied, can break what mathematics created. Today, Bletchley Park is a museum. Visitors can see rebuilt bombs, watch demonstrations of Enigma encryption, and learn about the code breakers who changed history. The story of breaking Enigma has been told in books, documentaries, and films like The Imitation Game. But some details remain classified. Some operations are still secret. Some methods are still considered too sensitive to reveal. Even 80 years later, the full story of breaking Enigma hasn't been told. What we know is this: British and American codebreakers working in absolute secrecy broke codes that Germany's best minds believed unbreakable. They read German military communications for years without the enemy knowing. They provided intelligence that helped win the Battle of the Atlantic, shorten the war, and save countless lives.
They proved that intelligence, in both senses of the word, wins wars, that brains can defeat brawn, that mathematics, properly weaponized, is as powerful as any bomb. Admiral Dönitz sent thousands of young men to die in submarines, confident their communications were secure. He trusted Enigma with German lives. That trust was betrayed by his own engineers who'd promised something they couldn't deliver, perfect security, and exploited by Allied codebreakers who refused to accept that mathematically impossible meant anything. 28,000 German submariners died, many because Enigma had been broken and they never knew. Their positions were known, their plans were read, their communications were transparent. They sailed to their deaths thinking they were invisible. They were wrong. Allied codebreakers could see them perfectly. The hunters thought they were invisible. Mathematics made them visible. And visibility in submarine warfare means death. German Admiral Karl Dönitz believed his U-boats were invisible. Then American and British codebreakers cracked Enigma and hunted them down. The code Germany trusted was broken. The secret Germany relied on was betrayed. The security Germany believed in was an illusion. And 28,000 German submariners paid for that illusion with their lives, dying in submarines whose communications were transparent to an enemy they never knew was reading their mail. The Battle of the Atlantic was won by destroyers and depth charges, but it was also won by mathematicians with pencils and paper who broke codes and saved millions of lives. Admiral Dönitz thought Enigma was unbreakable. He died still believing it. He was wrong, and that wrongness cost Germany the Battle of the Atlantic, thousands of submarines, and ultimately the war. Mathematics won, Germany lost, and the secret remained hidden for 30 years after the war ended. That's the power of breaking codes. That's the legacy of Bletchley Park. That's why intelligence, both kinds, wins wars.